The number one mistake people make when trying to leave the fear of abandonment behind is they leave out the process of individuation. In today's video, we're going to cover exactly what individuation means, how you can leverage through a very simple exercise the first major steps to individuating so you can leave your abandonment wounds behind in the past once and for all. Now, if you're new to this channel, my name is Thais, and I'm so glad you stopped by. I put daily videos out here on the Personal Development School YouTube channel, all about the subconscious mind, healing the relationship to self, and how that can help us build the best relationships of our lives with others. Now, if you're not familiar with this term of individuation, individuation is essentially a concept developed by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, who essentially refers to this process of integrating different parts of ourselves into a more unified whole. It basically refers to becoming aware and embracing the various aspects of our true personality so that we can achieve a sense of authenticity in terms of how we relate to the world with others. Now, what does that actually mean in more simplistic terms? Well, very simply, individuation requires us to get to know ourselves and what our authentic self really is all about so that we can begin relating to other people in our lives in a much more authentic way. Now, the reason this is so important to letting go of fears of abandonment is that whenever we have an abandonment wound that forms in childhood or in previous relationships, this abandonment wound caused us to become so focused on our external world, the outside world, and what everybody else thinks of us, that we lose the relationship to ourselves. And as soon as we lose the relationship to what our true self is, what our true interests are, what our true dreams are in terms of our career, or what we want our friendships or relationships to look like, or relationship to money, when we lose the connection to what our true hobbies and passions are, and we become more focused on outside approval than living our best life from the inside out rather than by external opinions or the outside in, we essentially create a vicious cycle. We lose the relationship to ourselves, and thus we proceed to seek externally for this absence, this feeling of lack and disconnect in the relationship to ourselves. But the more we seek it outside, the further we become disconnected from self, and the more we end up engaging in things like people pleasing and more self abandonment, which leaves us feeling more empty on the inside. And this cycle goes around and around. The more disconnected I am from myself, the more I seek approval externally to try to fill that painful void. And the more that I try to seek that from the outside in, the more it leaves this sense of emptiness inside of me. So I think it's first important for us to look at not just the pain or the discomfort of having that void of individuation, but also I'm curious if you take inventory about what your life has looked like with your fear of abandonment intact, how has this actually affected your relationships? And when you really truly look, I want to go through a couple questions here with you right now. And then we'll go into an exercise in a little bit that can really dig into how we can heal these fears of abandonment using what we now understand about individuation. And when you observe your life and relationships, how has this fear of abandonment stopped you from being your authentic self? How has this fear of abandonment caused you to stay in a space where you keep people pleasing and maybe then feel unseen or unheard, or that you don't matter to other people in relationships because your needs are always on the back burner? Or how has the fear of abandonment caused you to feel so dysregulated and anxious in your relationships that it becomes hard to truly connect and to share and show your true self with your loved ones in your life? And what would it look like if you could actually leave that fear of abandonment behind? How would it change or impact your relationships in a more positive manner? So let's dig into exactly this. Well, now that you understand that the more we don't have access to who we truly are and what's truly impactful and important to us, we can now start to realize that it's going to create that vicious cycle. The more empty I feel inside because I'm sourcing my identity of who I am through what people think of me, or if I'm people pleasing well enough, or if people think I'm a good person, again, from the outside in, the more I'm going to be trapped in this vicious cycle. So, the way out of this and the way to ultimately heal this fear of abandonment as a result is to start sourcing who we are from the inside out. To start showing up in our world and our lives through first introspecting about what matters to us, what our true career dreams are, financial relationship to money would be, what we want to see in a true friendship, romantic relationship, how we want our family relationships to be, not determined by those people or situations in our lives, but determined through our own process. So, how do we arrive there? Well, I'm going to take you through a series of questions that will actually help you get really clear. But I want you first to think about all of the ways that you get programmed by the outside world first, about how you think you should see yourself, perhaps how you view the relationship to your body, or what career you think you should be in. There's a lot of people who end up in careers not because they individuated and thought about what they're truly seeking and what lights them up, but instead because it was what society told them they should do or what their parents told them would be a career for them. I want you to really think about these different aspects in terms of how we even spend our money. A lot of people spend a lot of money, sometimes their whole paycheck, trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying to really make sure that they are going after their relationship to money and how they spend it all in material things to try to gain approval. But have you ever actually thought about if this is what you want, about if this is what you're really seeking? And again, the more we don't do this work to individuate and we keep trying to do what we think people or society wants us to do, the more disconnected we are from our truth, the more emptiness will be there, and the more we'll get caught trying to fill that emptiness with things on the outside. So, now we're going to go into how you can actually begin this work. And there's a wonderful quote that sort of reminds me of this process from Krishnamurti. And he says, "It's no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." I'm not sitting here saying necessarily that society is profoundly sick, although I definitely think there are some major challenges. But what I am trying to illustrate here is that it doesn't make you a better person to be spending all of your money on a fancy car or a fancy home, or to have the most people think that you're the best people pleaser. That probably isn't going to be something that you look back in 50 years and are happy that you spent your time focusing on. In fact, that might be something you really regret doing, and a way that you may come to regret living your life. And I want to add one more thing before we go into this exercise, which is the more you derive your identity from what circulating opinions and ideas exist within the collective, you derive your identity from the external world about what you should wear, how you should spend your money, the decisions that you should make for yourself, the more the opinions of others will terrify you. In fact, the more you'll basically fear rejection. So the less individuated we are, the more fragile it feels like our identity is, because it really is based on the fragile external world opinions of culture, society, or other people, which can be forever changing. But the more we really come to consider our truth in terms of who we want to become and how we want to design our lives, we end the cycle of self abandonment, which reconditions our mind to stop fearing abandonment from others, and we learn to derive a depth of our own identity from the meaningful place of the inside. This will help us feel more confident, more secure in what we want and what we're looking for, and also help us know our needs better so that we can more deeply connect with others. So, what are some questions that you can start asking yourself today to begin this process of individuation? Well, the very first question is to look at the different areas of your life and decide what you are showing up as and what you would like to create instead. So, we're going to go through the different areas together here. Let's start with looking at your career area of life. I'm curious, in this area, do you find that you're in a position where you are lit up by what you're doing? You're passionate, you're excited, you're really in alignment with your truth? Or do you find that you've more entered into a career or stumbled into a path because you kind of felt like that's what society or family or people around you wanted from or expected from you. And to go a step further, do you know the things that really light you up? Have you taken the time to consider what would make you truly happy and fulfilled in this area? Now, for some of you, you might say, yeah, I'm really fulfilled in this area. And then we would focus on the next areas of life because what I often find for individuals is that they tend to be very individuated in certain areas of life, like career and money, but then not be very individuated in other areas of life, things like health or relationships. So we're going to go and scan through these different areas together. And I want you to really take a look. Now, if you're struggling to find an answer to what would light you up and you're not sure, some fantastic starting questions to ask yourself are things like, what do people always ask you for help with or compliment you on? Or what are the things that you naturally do in this career area of life that you're researching in your spare time or naturally like to read about or investigate? Or what do you find yourself spending money on? Is it books of a certain topic? Is it taking courses for fun or engaging in different conversations with people around the career area that's interesting to you? And these questions are powerful questions to get you started in this process of individuation. So we're going to do this for the different areas. Let's look next at the financial area of life. What are your habits and patterns in this area? Do you find that you are spending money in a way that you've been conditioned to spend money? Perhaps you're a big consumer of all sorts of things. And that would be fine if that's how you were intentionally choosing. But are you intentionally choosing is really my question. Do you find that you are showing up to spend money or have a relationship to money that you have thought about and created for yourself? It's very common for people to be in a cycle of spending a ton of money and then realize I would feel much more free and fulfilled if I was saving 20% of my paycheck by cutting out going to restaurants on the weekend or cutting out going to Starbucks every day. Now, I know that that's not everybody's experience right now. And I understand that we're also in a very inflationary period where things are difficult. But I'm curious, not for you to have a specific dollar value or percent of money that you're saving, but more for you to consider who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in this area of life. And if we go into the next area, the mental area of life, this has a lot to do with our philosophies, our political opinions or views, the things we like to learn about. And I'm curious, have you spent time considering these things? What are your philosophies about life and how we should be living? Have you taken time to consider perhaps your morals or values in this area? Have you taken the time to really investigate both sides, perhaps, of a political spectrum to decide where you really belong? And these are not things you have to be doing, but these are things that when we're properly individuated around at least a couple of these areas, even topics that we just love learning or researching about, we tend to have a clear direction of what matters to us and feels meaningful in this particular area. Now, there's a few other areas that really you can ask your same questions too, which include the emotional and spiritual areas of life. And you actually taking the time to consider what really lights you up, makes you feel the best in those particular areas. And I'm going to skip over them for time's sake of this video and go right to the relationship area of life and to the physical area of life. I think the physical area of life is such a unique one because we see so much information on the internet about how you should be eating. For some people, it's you should be vegan or vegetarian. For other people, it's eat a keto diet. For other people, it's just simply high protein but low fat. There's so much information out there. And I think this is something that has such a personal impact on us, like how we eat, how we sleep, um, how we show up and exercise or the activities we partake in here, the hobbies for exercise. Are those things that you've taken the time to really consider what makes you feel best? Perhaps tracked those things, taken a look at what's been meaningful for you when you feel the most inspired, when your lifestyle and diet are going in the best way possible. Or you again just maybe following this kind of outside source of information or many sources of information and just feeling confused and bombarded. The more we get into relationship with our body, we'll start to see what really affects us in the best way possible. And again, that might be something that you also work with a naturopathic doctor on or something of that nature. But it's a really powerful thing to start actually listening to your body and the feedback that it gives to you. Now, last but not least, we can look at individuation in the relationship area of life. A lot of times we choose relationships based on our subconscious comfort zone. In other words, we choose relationships from a place that has a lot to do with what we saw growing up in our family household. Maybe you saw that relationships were all about fighting and arguing growing up. And so you find yourself repeating these patterns in relationships with others. Or maybe you found that everybody was kind of distant and neglectful in your home. And so maybe you tend to do relationships in that way. But my question for you is, how do you want your relationships to look? What are your standards that you're looking for? What qualities are you seeking in a partner or even in friends or family members that are close to you? And what are your absolute non negotiables, the things that you're not willing to settle for and are not okay? And the more we take the time to really consider these different avenues of our lives and seek to live and design our life accordingly, the more individuated we will become and the less we will be abandoning ourselves, thus breaking out of that vicious cycle of self abandonment and emptiness that we try to satiate from the external world inward, leaving us in a place where we only come to fear abandonment more. So, hopefully, this has been a very helpful thought conversation for you or thought provoking conversation. I really appreciate you being here. And if you want to do a deeper dive into individuation as a whole, I have a course that you can check out fully free just for a limited time, all about strengthening self identity and really digging into what needs you have and going through worksheets and exercises that dive even deeper into the topic of individuation and who you want to become and how to have a really strong sense of self that will improve your sense of confidence in many, many areas of life. If you want to check that out, I will put the link below. That link will also give you access to all of our features at the Personal Development School and House. So we have a daily webinar, we have a daily support group Monday through Saturday. I'm in there 3 of those days a week. If you have any questions for me at any time, I'm there to support you. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for being here and for stopping by. And I really look forward to seeing you in future videos. If you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything.